I was not a I was not one who knew much about Black history. I'm not gonna I'll be perfectly honest. My parents didn't really talk about it. My mom didn't want to go back to where she was from in Tennessee. I went to see my dad's birth home in Asheville, North Carolina, on a couple of occasions, but I think there was some trauma that happened in my mom's background.
Speakers that's coming from your left. Let's see if it'll come up because I don't see any other audio coming up.
Hello, you still hear me? Okay. Well, in any event, and so I really wasn't that astute to Black history. And but I've always been doing different things. I'm based out of Detroit, and back in 1984, I did a program where at this historically Black college, which has now come back into the fold, called Lewis Business College, and I found some Black business owners who, at the time, this is 94, they were in their 70s and 80s. One guy was the first Black car dealer in America, new car dealer. Another guy owned a number of pharmacies and he had his own brand of ice cream. Another guy had a print shop. Another guy was a florist. And so there might have been 4, 5, 6, 7 people on the panel. I found the footage like 20 some odd years later. And I had just shot it with like a camcorder. I didn't know I was going to become who I am. And it got me to thinking, let me investigate this Black business history component. And so then I decided I was going to do a movie about it. And this is the DVD to the movie, everyone. It is streaming on Amazon. It's titled Business in the Black. And in the movie, I do talk about the rise of Black business in America and some of the things that Michael just mentioned, the early days of Black business. And but I could not use some footage from that event, so I had to start off fresh. I began to investigate, and I found out some stories of enslaved Black people who owned businesses, and I was blown away because they just did not teach that in school. I think if I would have known that, that would have motivated me tremendously more than the negative stories that they talk about. Where I like to use the term the beat down of us, enslavement, and how they say it was our fault, and what he did to us, and so on and so forth. And so I want to turn the coin just a little bit on what I call good Black history. And so I want to talk about some enslaved Black people who went not just to college, but not as much that, but enslaved Black people who own businesses. And so I'm gonna share the screen with you all, and then we're gonna have time for some Q&A on the back end, and let's talk about this. And so, like I said, I'm an author and host of this podcast. Let me just give you a little bit on the podcast. It's called Strong Inspirations. I've been doing it 3 years since the start of the pandemic in 2020. And because I have a book out too. Let me back up. This is the book, everybody. It's titled Black Business Book. I got over 200 facts in here. I got over 30 businesses owned by slaves and another 150 or some odd businesses that they weren't enslaved, because we go all the way to the 1960s. And so as a result of writing the book and the pandemic coming along, I thought, what else is I want to do? And then I came up with Strong Inspirations. I invite you to take a look at it and watch some of the videos on there. I have over 500 videos from around the world. I do the interview via Zoom. They last about an hour. For example, I have the Black guy who owns the oldest Black-owned business in America, not far from you all in Columbus, Ohio. It's called E&E Ward Transportation. It was started by a guy who was formerly enslaved. and it's just passed down through the generations. And so let me go through some of these slides. I'm gonna do some extra talking. I use the hashtag Good Black History, the rise of Black history in America. Black history is more than February, please. It's more than now Juneteenth, please. It's something that we all to at least understand and learn and have a quest for knowledge of, because as they sometimes say, if you don't know your history, it can repeat itself. And we are in unique times right now. And the things that some of the other folk are doing is some of the same stuff that they pulled back in the day. And we can see it. And because we know what they did. So, did you know there were slaves who owned a business? I didn't know that. And it's incredible. And I'm gonna go through this. The first thing I want to say is, how could slaves own businesses? Not all enslavers were farmers. Some were business owners, and they used their slaves to help in their business. Because as a enslaved person, I mean, you could tell me what to do, when to do it, how to do it, and not pay me for doing it. Just in some respects, provide me some clothing, some meal, and some shelter. But there were instances, because the thing about slavery that we had to keep in mind, it's not all black and white. It wasn't like everybody was, the enslaver was the worst person or the worst person to all their people. There were enslavers who were some, let's call it amenable, but they participated in the institution because it was the sign of the times. And they had their favorites, so on and so forth. So the enslaver, they might let their slave keep some of the money that they charged to help them in the business. Or the slaves had skills that the enslaver would hire out. So for example, if, and I'm gonna go to the next screen right now. I want you to check this one out. This guy right here his name is Free Frank McHorter. He's born in 1777, almost 100 years before the end of slavery in 1865. Frank was a carpenter for his enslaver and was so good at it that his enslaver would allow him to keep some of the money. See, because his enslaver was not, he might have been a farmer, but he also built some of the houses, because somebody had to build the houses that they lived in. Well, my man said, Frank, I want you to do it. Frank got so astute to it that Frank probably said to him, well, hey, man, let me just run that business. You go off and do whatever else you want to do. I know how to price out the goods. I know how to, get the people to help the other laborers and slaves to help do it. I know a little bit of how you charge the money, so on and so forth. I know how to run the books, maybe. So the guy says, yeah, well, if you can take it off me, I'm, amenable to letting you keep some of the money. Frank was so tough that he made so much money, he bought his freedom and the freedom of 18 other people. Now, let me just stop right there. When you talk about buying the freedom, like I said earlier, the enslaver would say, okay, you my favorite. I'm gonna let you go free, but you got to pay me $1,000, some astronomical number. Or you got to pay me $50. You got to give me a horse. He set there was no specific value that he would set. So Frank's guy said, hey, whatever it was, Frank came up with the money and he bought his freedom and the freedom of 18 others. Now, Frank McHorter, now he's free. He moved away and he bought land in Illinois and named it New Philadelphia. And he is considered the first Black to incorporate a town. Then what Frank did was he sold plots of land to other people and made money that way. check it out. It's my town. Frank was the mayor and set the rules for how life would be in New Philadelphia. And it's an amazing story of resilience of this black guy, Frank McWhorter. Here's another guy. His name is Lunsford Lane. He was born in 1803. He bought his freedom while selling fruit by the basket. I'm sure he had to get the enslavers some of the money. There's no question about that. So he sold fruit. He would decorate the basket in such a way to attract customers and grow his business, and bought his freedom and went out on his own. Here's a couple other people that bought their freedom. William Allison was born in 1790. He became a cotton gin maker and used profits to buy his and his wife's freedom. Let me stop you right there, and I'm a sidebar every now and then. My sidebar is this: the husband or the wife can be free, and their spouse be enslaved, and they still live in the same house. It's a crazy dynamic. I got my freedom for one reason or another, and there are various reasons. I bought my freedom. My mom was born free. She had gotten her freedom, and as a part of that offspring, I'm now free. You couldn't just make me your slave. It had to be some transactions. Let me also say that the enslaver, there was responsibilities that they had to pay a tax on their slaves because we were considered property. So if you got to pay a tax, you got to have a little bit of money to be able to afford. And you had to have some kind of money to take care of the person, so on and so forth, to house them and things of that sort. And so he bought his and his wife's freedom. William Troy was born in 1827. He made enough money designing shoes that he could buy his freedom, and this is maybe kind of funny, he decided not to because he wanted to move. He didn't want to move away from where he was living. Let me tell you what that means. If you got your freedom in certain territories, certain states, cities, what have you, you had a year before you had to leave, or they could, and there was a law to this degree, or they could enslave you again. A man said, hey, my enslaver ain't all that bad. I'm making money. Everything is good enough for me, so I don't want to move. Kind of funny dynamic, but nonetheless. Now, check this out. Here's two rich guys. Stephen Smith bought his freedom for $50. Like I say, you can, charge what, and all this is documented. Yeah. See, because one of the things they did was there are a lot in certain instances paperwork that the enslaver kept records for tax reasons, things of that sort. They were pretty astute, in keeping records. People have found records of their great-great-grandfather. I got a lady on my show, Strong Inspirations, where she's got the records that her great-great-grandfather, who was enslaved, played the violin on the plantation. And, someone wrote about it in a diary or things of that sort. And so that's how we know some of these things. He had to put it in the tax records or something like that. So he bought his freedom for, 1822. My man, he later owned a lumber and coal business. He got so wealthy at it that he had sales of over $100,000. His net worth grew to roughly $500,000 in today's terms. Stephen Smith. Robert Gordon bought his freedom in 1846. Years later, he owned a coal yard. And when he died, they estimate his net worth to be around $200,000 in today's terms. Because once you're free, and that's the standard of which you live, I would suspect white people would patronize your business. You got good coal, you got good service, your lumber is good, and they would patronize your business. William Ripper, born in 1804, he owned a huge lumber yard, and his partners were white people who he eventually bought out of the business. He also owned a large grocery store. Now, I don't know. If you look at the picture, and it's done in black and white, he probably looked like he was white in real life. So that gave you some advantages. That is no question about it. Might even have tried to pass that way, but he was black. And one of the things that I got to say in this point, a lot of times when the people did have that shade of a very fair complected, and they might have did some things to take advantage of it, many of them knew their particular status and on the down low were aggressive abolitionists. Aggressive abolitionists. William Ripper could have been that kind of guy. But nonetheless, this guy right here, William Leesdorf, he was born in 1810. His father was a white man who had him work on his boat where William learned the shipping business. See, because he was out of the new Louisiana area. So they were, selling up the waters of Louisiana. Somebody had to take, the product from one part or the cotton from here and take it there. And so they had shipping as one of their big industries. Well, William eventually gained his freedom. He opened up his own business and became very successful. He went into shipping also. He ended up moving to New York, as the story was told. And then he left New York and he moved to California. And at the time, California was under Mexican rule. See, because a lot of that far west was not necessarily considered United States. It was part of Canada, as was Texas, as was New Mexico. So he moved out to California. He talked the Mexican government into selling him 35,000 acres. 35,000 acres. Then, after America gained control of California, he owned a hotel, a shipping yard, and was school board president. And he is considered the founder of San Francisco. Black man. There's a black man considered the founder of Chicago, right? Trappers and stuff like that, I think the guy did. But he's considered, and they wanted him to be the mayor because he's the richest guy in town at that time. And he said, nah, that might be a little more headache than I want. I want to work with the kids and I want to be president of the school board. And there's historical markers in his honor in San Francisco. You see it, you look at the last name, you look at the picture, you might not say, oh man, that looks like a black guy. So you might not, take it to know that's the story. But William Leesdorf fits that bill. This lady right here, this sister, her name is Mary Ellen Pleasant. She was born in 1814. Very aggressive businesswoman. She owned some boarding houses, a laundry, a bank, and lots of land. This was out in the Oklahoma territory. Some say she is the first black millionaire. Now, when they say that, and they give credit to Madam C.J. Walker, I interviewed Madam C.J. Walker's daughter on my broadcast. I invite you to take a look at that. It's her great granddaughter because she was adopted by the daughter. If you remember seeing the movie Self-Made, I interviewed the daughter, and she shows up in the movie, in interviews, things of that sort. Madam C.J. Walker was a very aggressive businesswoman in the 1900s. A little known secret about her, she only operated her business for 13 years. She was 37 when she started the company. She died at 51. She did all that fast. But she was, one of the things that I come to find out when you're in business or whatever you do in life, you got to have a good component to it. What I mean by that is, I'll give you an example of Madam C.J. Walker's. Her good component was she wanted to help women become self-sufficient. So she kind of based some of her principles on that. She would allow women, who, maybe went to her school or something like that, to name their business, their hair salon, Madam C.J. Walker. Good, smart business move on her part, was built up the name, uh, and so on and so forth. And I've been to her building, which still stands today in Indianapolis, Indiana, and it's still operative. Not the products per se, but the operations of the building as a historical site. I'm sure they still rent out office space, things of that sort. But this Mary Ellen Pleasant, most people say she really was the first black millionaire. Real tough system. Here's a guy, probably one of them fly type dudes. That's not, he's not a minister. That's just a crew neck shirt. Probably one of them cool guys. And he was born in 1817. He owned a popular hair salon that sold wigs and the finest perfume. 1817. Here's one, you can check out this lady. Elizabeth Keckley, born in 1818. She was a dressmaker. Now let me stop there and say, when I said that not all the enslavers, were farmers or something, there was all them other things. They're just normal life that we think about today. Well, I mean, somebody got to fix my pants. I'm working out in the field. My pants is falling down. And, Mr. Masterman, could you get Elizabeth to tighten my pants up for me? Make them so they don't fall down. If it's okay, sir. Miss Elizabeth, would you put the buttons on my dress? I got this is what the mistress might say. I got a nice gown and I got to go out somewhere, the dinners and dances or whatever they did. Could you put the buttons on? Elizabeth got so good at it, she became a fashion designer. She was so tough that her enslaver would allow her, I said he, but her to travel up north to meet clients by herself. Let me stop you right there and say this. Again, all this is in gray area. I'm your slave. You want me to go up north to go do something because you can't do it. You tell me, go on up there for me. I know where you're going. But if you don't come back, let me tell you, I'm gonna hurt your family. So you decide if you want to take that chance, but you leaving your kids, your son, and your daughter back here. So you going up there and handling your business, but you better come back. Elizabeth Keckley got so good that she bought her freedom. She ended up moving to Washington, D.C., and her biggest client and personal friend, she was the personal confidant of Mary Todd Lincoln, Abraham Lincoln's wife. She was the personal confidant. Mary Lincoln would ask her, well, how do you think Lincoln should handle this? How do you think, to talk on behalf of Black people? Elizabeth Keckley was that person. And she became very wealthy as a result of this. And she ended up writing a book about it. Oh man, this is a story that is very unique in many respects. This guy right here, the guy in the picture, his name is C.R. Patterson. He was born in 1833. C.R. Patterson, when he was born, enslaved, and it was 30-some years later before he got his freedom, 1865. On the plantation, he was the guy that would fix the horse and buggies. My horse, the wheel came off. CR, go in there and fix the wheel, do whatever mechanical thing you could do. The rope around the horse's neck is not right. He would fix that. The wagon is, the wheels are coming off, whatever. That was C.R. Patterson's job. So then, as he gets later in life, 38 years later, his second son is born. His name is Frederick Patterson. Frederick Patterson goes to Central State. He's one of the first blacks, or one of the first students at Central State. in Ohio. He goes and he studies engineering. Well, uh, he comes back and he works in the family business. By this time, they got their freedom and they moved to Ohio. They moved to a town called Greenfield, Ohio. And now it's in the early 1900s and cars have become motorized. This brother goes from enslaved to manufacturing motorized vehicles. And he's competing against Henry Ford and beating him. Because you know what happens, a lot of times with the brothers, we get in there and we start putting all these little details on there that, make the car a little more fashionable, a little more slick. Henry Ford didn't have just that old Model T. My man probably had other kind of features on his vehicles. And he operated motorized cars, building them for about 16, 17 years. Now, let me back up. Before he was doing the motorized, with the horse and buggies, he was adding different components to the part that people sat in, let's say, and got good at it. He moved to Greenfield, Ohio, became a pillar of that community. I interviewed his maybe 3-time great granddaughters. And it's crazy. They said, well, what happened? Well, I don't know how they found me. But they came on the show. They sent me a message. It was incredible. And what they said happened was they were at the family home and a storm had come through, maybe a tornado in Ohio or something like that. But the home was being damaged. They went to check up on it. And there was papers loose around in the basement or something like that. And they began to look at the papers. And they said, well, what is this? They found one of the advertising brochures of this automobile company. And, because no one had ever told them that story. I don't know. Sometimes we just don't pass it down. Now, they then did more investigation and found out how they were, again, pillars of the community, how Frederick's life ended up on a high note. They saw some, like say the paperwork about the Greenfield Motors, and Henry Ford beat him out, because he didn't get the financial backing that Henry Ford did, but they all know of him. He's in the Automotive Hall of Fame. This guy here. Robert Reed Church. He was born in 1839. He owned a bank. See, because now that the community is growing a little bit. This is Memphis, Tennessee, so on and so forth. There are free Black people running around. There are people who have jobs. There are people who need to pool their money together. Because one of the earliest things that Black people did, and I didn't really talk about this, but let me do it now, is that they formed mutual aid societies, Masonic orders. They formed banks, insurance agencies, and in many instances, all those are avenues to pool your money together, in particular the banks and so on and so forth. And so my man owned a bank. He had several restaurants along the famous Beale Street in Memphis, Tennessee. Very wealthy guy, Robert Reed Church. This guy right here, Reverend Preston Taylor, he was born in 1849. He owned a bank. Again, banks was something that they wanted to do, to help the community out. And then and so I take in all this money. I don't know, you pay the dollar, you keep it here. I keep enough reserve just in case something happens, what have you. I can then loan out money to some other people and charge an interest on that. And that's how I make money. And so he owned the bank. He had a construction company that built 400 miles of railroad from Mount Sterling to Richmond, Virginia, which was incredible, first of all, for him to get the contract and to do this. And then secondly, it is noted that he did it hiring white people, not just Black workers, White people wanted to work for him. He did it under budget, and he did it on time. Very astute business person. And then he later owned other businesses, beside these. And he started organizations, so on and so forth. What I want to do now, and by no means that I've had all of them. Like I said, I got 30 of them in the book. But I mean, for the sake of just kind of giving you a little idea about this, I thought it would be good to tell you about some of the Black business districts. And what that means is when Black people started leaving the South, and also in the South, they, were segregated to live as we are, even to some extent today, among ourselves. And they had these neighborhoods that, this one here, the first one, and I'm sure it's not the first at all, not, with the Frank McHorter story, but Weeksville, New York, 1838, formed by James Weeks, which is now Bed-Stuy, where Spike Lee is, talks about so on and so forth. That was a Black neighborhood. The Freedmen's Village in Virginia, 1836, that was established by the U.S. government. And what that was when the Civil War was happening and started in 1862, the Northern troops was coming through the South, Virginia and all them other places, and they're defeating the Confederates. When they defeated a Confederate, the Black people on the land said, hey, they said you're free. That was part of that Emancipation Proclamation. So we didn't ran the white people out. So, okay, what are we going to do? We got to have a place to live. This is one of those communities called Freedmen's Village. This is a unique story right here, this Africa town. What happened was in 1808, they abolished the importation of importing Africans for slavery here in America. The British and kind of said, hey, it's getting to us, the consciousness of it all, the brutality of what you all are doing in America. Because when the British had slaves, they didn't have what we have coined the term chattel slavery. It wasn't the brutality that the Americans put on it, right? It had forms, but it was more like housekeeping and that kind of thing. Doing, not paying us to do the work. Well, this guy in Mobile, Alabama, which is Africatown is a little suburb of it, or an inner city of Mobile. White guy, him and the buddy, they out drinking one night. White guy, rich, he got a boat or something. He said, man, let me tell you something. I think I'm gonna go get me some slaves. I want to make a little money off selling them and stuff like that. So he goes over to one of the countries in Africa and he bargains and buys whatever he does to get the Africans on the boat. And then he comes back to America. Now you got to creep because it's illegal, right? And he, he's, got to do it in the middle of the night because the government is on the side of. We told you we're not letting that happen no more. And he ends up burning up the boat. And I would say probably about 6-7 years ago, it has been noted that they have found remnants of the Catilda. Well, he brings them in about 1864, 65, something like that, before slavery is completely abolished. No, I think it was 1863. He brings them in there. A couple years later, slavery ends. And now those that were on the boat and others that were in that Mobile area, they formed their own community in which they have now coined it Africatown. And it's a thriving area today. There are people who are descendants of those Africans, understandably, and they are aggressively doing things to make it a travel destination. I, on my show, have interviewed one of the guys whose great-grandfather was on that boat. And he talks about, I think he said he even met him. The guy is in his 70s. And when the guy was on the boat, he was a teenager. You know, he could have been 12, 13. So he lived that long. Nicodemus, Kansas, that was another black town in 1877. Eatonville, Florida, 1887, considered one of the first self-governing all-black municipalities. I've been to Eatonville. It's right outside. It's right near Orlando. I went to Orlando and I spoke at a couple museums in Orlando. And I said, I got to go to see this Eatonville. And it's small, but it's very small. They got, but everything there is black run, even to this day. The mayor, I think they say they have probably, I don't know, maybe 9,000 people in the community. But it's all self-contained. This other one, Mount Bayou, Mississippi, is another community. It's got a unique history. 1887. The story goes that the enslaver in this Mississippi town, I'm remiss on his name, was a kind of a gentle enslaver. He allowed the slaves to get an education. He allowed them to run businesses in his district, so on and so forth. He thought probably that, hey, if I treated them fairly, they would be nice to me. They would work aggressively. They wouldn't run. All would be well. And so then when freedom came, they all formed their own community, which is called Mount Bayou. It's still operating today. I interviewed the guy on the show who has a museum there. And they have an annual homecoming for the descendants and so on and so forth. And it's a thriving community. One of the other ones is the little Haiti community of Durham, North Carolina, centered around North Carolina Mutual Insurance Company. The insurance company became one of the largest in America, largest black-owned businesses. And they were national. And because they were headquartered in Durham and had big offices, things of that sort, other businesses sprang up. And they called themselves Little Haiti because Haiti, some people don't know or don't really understand, is one of the first black Caribbean islands or just communities in large to fight for their freedom. And it's a marker of resilience and pride that we need to have in Haiti. And so that's why they called it that. Rosewood, Florida, you might have heard the Rosewood Massacre. Well, Rosewood is a community that was actually a swampland. There were enslaved people. When they escaped, they ran different directions. And if you were in Florida, you can't run all the way up north. So you might run into the woods, and they call them maroons. And so people ran into the woods. And the enslavers said, I ain't going in there, man. There's snakes and everything else. And the people in there found a way to get guns and shoot back. So I'm going to just let that go. And Rosewood is kind of that ilk. And it was a thriving community. They found a way to cut land and stuff like that. And then there were many black towns in Oklahoma. At one point, there were probably over 300 of them. Like Boyle, Oklahoma is one of the names. But since then, so many of them have been incorporated in other larger cities. But Oklahoma was that. And they were black communities, thriving black communities. Let's talk a little bit about this Tulsa, Oklahoma, only in this regard, because I'm going to keep this positive with you, my friends. The Black Wall Street. There were other black, like I say, many cities had Black Wall Street, not as to the extent of what Tulsa did, because they were rich black people. Some of them had that oil on their land, and they made money, and they got money from that oil. I've been to Tulsa. I was super excited. They honored me with a plaque from the state of Oklahoma, the city of Tulsa. It was a big deal for me. Made me cry, actually. But after the massacre in 1921, the residents of the district rebuilt in a record pace, and is reported that 764 of the 2,500 destroyed homes were rebuilt within 5 months. And within 20 years, they had doubled the number of Black-owned businesses in that area. So you can't stop us. That's the moral of the story. And they rebuilt Tulsa, Oklahoma. Uh, I got a sidebar on this one. I mean, I'm almost coming to an end. I know we're at the 45 minutes, what have you. When I was there, the lady who introduced me was the great niece of the black guy that they had, that the white girl had said had, or that they had thought of had was raping the white girl, let's say, right? And they were having a relationship, a consensual relationship. And probably 3 or 4 years later, after all of what had happened, they got married in Massachusetts. I just had to tell you that. It blew my mind when she told me that. Black folks, and also let me tell you, black folks did not go quietly. There were some people who had their own guns and they shot back. But I mean, that's why when the white folks got mad and started bombing it. And when you go there, you can see all the historical markers in the ground and stuff like that, saying this business was here, this business was here, that business was there. When I was there, I ate at a restaurant right in the Greenwood district, is what it was called, in the heart of the Black Wall Street. And it was good food, good soul food. They showed my movie at the library there, that all the cross street from where the high school the students went. Oh, I gotta throw some Pittsburgh in there before I come to a close. You know about the Hill District. It had a number of restaurants and nightclubs, the Crawford Grill, the Collins Inn, the Hummingbird, the Leader House, the Toontown Hub. Any of you all know about that? Any of those names in the Hill District? Here's just I'm gonna stay on Pittsburgh just a little bit more. Some of the black business owners. Had you all heard of Benjamin Richards? He was a butcher and a contractor who was the wealthiest man in Pittsburgh, and I don't know if that's black and white. In the 1870s, he supplied meat and provisions to military folks. There was a brother named Alexander McDonald Williams. He built Central Museum Park in the Hill District in the 1920s, the first black-owned and operated professional sports team in the United States. I don't know, it probably was baseball. Yeah, it probably was baseball. Donald Jefferson owned the Lincoln Drug Company in East Liberty from 1923 to 1967, making it the first African-American owned store in the area. And then this Jenny Margaret Proctor owned Proctor's Hair Shop, a ladies' beauty salon in downtown Pittsburgh, which I'm sure that had to be pretty big to do that at the time. I was looking at, it's just a glimpse of our greatness. It's more stories than this. I want to, leave some for the Q&A, what have you. But you can't stop us. That's the moral of the story. They couldn't back then. And that's what our kids need to know. These are pictures of my book, Black Business Book. It's got over 200 of these facts. If you can see this, I number the fact, and I got reference in the back to where I found the fact. I got some quotes, I got some pictures, and what I don't have is commentary. I let the facts stand on its own merit. I don't want to give you my opinion of what happened with these facts, and that's why I'm able to have so many of them. And then the children's book has 30 rich black business owners who lived in the 1800s. You see some of the pictures, but one of them, like this guy here, if you see that picture, Andrew Foster, he's the founder of Nigger League Baseball. Black guy founded Nigger League Baseball. He talked the Chicago White Sox owner to allow him to run the Negro team of the White Sox. Then he bought the team. Other black and white guys had teams around America. And at his heyday, they, along with Madam C.J. Walker, were the largest black-owned business in the country. He was big. The other guy you see on the picture, Malcolm B. Allen, is the first black lawyer, licensed lawyer. He was out of the Boston area, and he formed a law firm. And this is the early 1800s. Then you know about Elizabeth Keckley and Madam C.J. Walker. I'm going to leave you with this. People say, well, how did Frederick Douglass make money? He had that newspaper, and you had to pay to get the paper. It wasn't free. So it was, you paid her for a subscription, or you paid at the, when a little boy was selling them or something like that. And then the other thing is, a lot of times when, people said, Frederick, we want you to come to speak, he said, hey, it's an honorarium. And so he made money that way. But he became a very wealthy guy, with his political ties, so on and so forth. And I've been to his home in Anacostia District of Washington, D.C. Big, beautiful house. I don't know, they got 10 rooms or something like that. It's sitting on top of the hill where he can look down on the Capitol. So I'm going to stop there. I'm going to stop to share um, questions, so on and so forth, I guess.
Yes. So anybody have any questions at this time? Guess you could drop them in the Q&A and the chat, and I will relay them to Mr. Anthony.
Oh, very lightning, cool. Yeah, they'll tell you this story, man. And there's so many more. And that's the thing we need to understand is be proud of our history. Black folks went to college, and I just did a presentation an hour before this where I talked about that. Going to Harvard and Yale. W.E. Du Bois went to Harvard in 1890 something. He still couldn't get a job when he came out. So he ended up teaching at Wilberforce, which was a job. And he became the great man that he is today. How about this? I got one for you. A lot of people ask me, I've had people say, well, what happened to the businesses? Excuse me, what happened to the business?
Oh, I have a question.
There's a question there.
Yep, you said.
Yeah. What happened? There are a few of them still around. There's one that I can't get the lady on my shelf for some reason, but I do talk about it in the book. It's called H.R. Boyd Publishing Company. They're out of Nashville, Tennessee. They're over 130 years old. And what happened was, if you might know, there's a National Baptist Convention, and then there's a Council of Baptist USA, I think it is. Well, the guy who started it back in the day, and when it was just one council, he printed all the programs and the flyers and stuff like that, the books and stuff for them. And people got mad. Hey, you making money off of us. You're not giving us enough money back. So he just said, hey, I'm going to keep printing, and started his own council. So there are two of them, and it's a result of that. But they're still operating. That E&E Ward is still operating in Columbus, Ohio, that I know of. And I'm sure there are others. Some of the money is passed down. The Madam C.J. Walker, there's still none of the products out on for sale, but the daughter does keep the name alive. The building is still operating. I got a guy on my show who he's a farmer, right? And somewhere I think in Kentucky, he bought the farm that his great grandparents were enslaved on. He bought the farm, and
Okay.
He's operating it as a business today.
I have a few questions.
Yeah, all right.
I have some questions that popped up in the Q&A. The first one is from Shayla Brown, and she asks, what are the biggest challenges Black business owners face today?
I think the biggest challenges is one, some of us will save money, access to capital. That's always one, because, a lot of times you go to the bank, you got to have good credit ratings, and you got to, have your paperwork in order, and track history. You got to have somebody to, collateralize, put collateral on a loan. I'm sure that's one of them, but there are grants and so on and so forth that are out there. And the other is just the mindset of thinking big, and providing a good product and a good service. People have started with nothing to make something big out of it. And I think that, and maybe you might not want to just say, I only want to do something with Black people. That you miss a whole big market if you could, have others patronize your business.
Okay, our next question is what role does financial literacy and access to capital play in the growth of Black businesses?
It plays a big role because you got to have money to make money. There's that old adage. There are people who started with nothing. Yeah. And they found money some way, somehow. And so, you know, the thing about it is once you get the money, write a plan down. That's the first thing. If I got the money, what am I going to do? And how can I, on paper, prove that what I'm going to use the money for, I can get a return from? How can I guess that there's so many people that might patronize my business? Once you can do that, that's that. And then read books. I mean, everything's online. You can read YouTube. You can, watch YouTube. You can read books. The literacy is only because a person doesn't do the additional homework.
Okay, our next question is from Jacqueline Cavalier. She'd like to know, why do you think there's not more willingness to teach resilience through these stories instead of a great emphasis on oppression?
And it's funny. I got a video coming out on my Strong Inspirations. Look for that. It'll be out tomorrow. Where a guy talks about a lot of people just don't know these stories, and so all we've been told is the beatdown. And when you're told that, then you get this mindset that there is no others. There are a lot of people who don't want to deal with Black history because they think all it is going to be the beat down. When you see the movies and so on and so forth, it's the slavery. And you get tired. Oh, I've seen that already. I don't want to see that again. There are times where I might be vending my book somewhere, and I've had people say, "Oh man, I know Black history. I'm Black." Like, really? You know everything? And I leave it at that.
I have a question in the chat. Have you encountered Black-owned mortuaries and funeral homes from the 1800s?
Yes. We have one here in Detroit that was started in the 1800s, still Cole Funeral Home that's still operating. There are many of them, I'm sure, across the country. I don't know, who all are out there and how old they are, but that, the funeral homes was one that the white people couldn't take away from us. One that we continually did support, through the generations. Many of them stayed within our community. Many of the white ones in the early days would not even bury Black people. Here in Detroit, we have a Black-owned cemetery that's over 100 years old. It's in a white area, which is kind of amazing to me. But somehow these Black people, they were lawyers and doctors at the time. They bought the land. White people didn't know what they were doing. They bought the land, and they probably got, 10, 15 acres in a white community. And then they built the funeral and used it for that. So, yeah, I'm sure there's many of them that because they didn't and would not, provide the service for Black people, Black funeral homes sprang up, and many of them are probably still operating today, as long as they were able to pass through the generations.
Okay, and our last question is, how do you find the descendants of these business leaders to interview them?
Good question. The guy from the EA Ward, I Googled old Black business and he came up. I called the number. He had a website. I called the number, got to the secretary, told her what I wanted to do. I'm sure he vetted me just a tad or something like that. He said, "Yeah, man, I'll come on," because I keep it playing in the show. The lady from the publishing company, I saw her at the Congressional Black Caucus. They had a booth because they still operate. They still, they want people to use their service. And I looked at the booth and saw the sign. I said, "Well, dang, that's the one that's in my book." I got a chance to talk to her. I must admit, I have not had a chance to have her come on the show yet, for whatever, but I keep begging. Maybe one day she will. It's just, sometimes I go through some old subscriptions I have of Black Enterprise, and I see if they're still around. I find them, and then some of it's word of mouth. Some people tell me they know somebody And I've had that happen many times. And who they know is the daughter or the granddaughter of who was the owner. And we go from there. But the one with the guy with the car manufacturing, they found me, saw the show and sent me a message. I was like, what? Because I had not heard of it. And we went from there. Well, I had heard about it, put it in the book, but I didn't know the descendants was, who they were.
Well, I don't have any more questions. And I would just like to say, no, thank you for your time. This was informative, inspirational, empowering, and very, very, very knowledgeable. And you're very knowledgeable, man. And I wish there were more like you. And I'm happy that you are willing to actually take the time to do this level of research to put this in a book and make sure that it's ready and people know that it's out there so it can be shared. And even with the children's book, I think a lot of our kids need to actually know and see that there are people have strived and accomplished a lot. And even in some of the roughest times of our history, they were able to accomplish a lot of great things. And that will be inspiring for them today to realize that there's no obstacle that can actually stand in your way that can hold you back and stop you from seeing and pursuing the things that you want to achieve in life. And again, I thank you. Wonderful presentation. And I thank everyone also for attending. Everyone to take time out today to be here and to sit here with us and to get this good Black history.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And everybody go to businessintheblack.net, get you a copy of this book. It's good. Like you say, it's very inexpensive. Get the children's book, watch my movie on Amazon. I got another movie coming out probably in February titled They Did It. It's about 12 rich Black people in the 1800s. I keep that storyline going because I like talking about it. And watch my show too, Strong Inspirations, and on YouTube. I got Frederick Douglass's great grandson on there, Madam C.J. Walker's granddaughter, Ida B. Wells' grandson, and many others, over 500 others on the show. So, hey, thank you so much for having me. I think what happened is I called you all, and
And
you all
thank
said, "Hey,
you.
man, what my man talking about?" And probably did look me up, and here I am. And so you allow me to share this, and to the viewers, stay strong. Because in my world, strong stands for strength, tenacity, resilience, and a sense of oneness, nobility, and grace.
And if there isn't any more questions, that will conclude our presentation. Thank you all. And have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
All right, thanks a lot.
Hi.
Okay, you stayed on. I didn't know if you got my
Yeah,
message.
sorry.
Okay.
I couldn't respond to the chat. But I was wondering if I could just ask you a few questions as well, just regarding why you decided to host this seminar, and what you hope that some of the attendees learned this evening.
Anthony, she's speaking to you. This is
Oh, she's speaking to you. Oh, I thought she said
no,
she wanted to host it.
Sorry.
she's speaking to you. This
Okay.
is Miss Brown from the Tribune Review.
Hi,
About the
nice
Okay.
to
interview I told
connect.
you about.
Okay. Yeah.
Nice
Yeah.
to
Okay.
connect with
Okay. I got you asking me. Well, one of the things is I think people don't know these stories.
you.
I spoke at Martha's Vineyards earlier this year, and everybody was in their 40s and 50s, and I said, "Did y'all know any of this?" And they were like, "No, I never heard it." So I know I'm on to something by sharing some of these names, and there's so many more that
Mhm.
people tell me about. So it's just to enlighten and inspire and educate.
Right. And so one of the, one of CCAC's campuses is in Homewood. and it used to be a place with a lot of, you know, thriving Black businesses. How do you hope this conversation helps the people within the community to stay encouraged?
Well, first of all, I think once if people know that it has happened, that it can happen again. I mean, if you never knew what it was, you know, because you're younger and did never see it, and you only see it in one particular light, you might not know of the possibilities.
Right.
And so the other thing that I say when people say, "Well, why do we don't have the business that we once have?" Well, you know, we've expanded into so many other directions that weren't available to us, you know, back in the day. Um, you know, so hopefully it gets people to thinking that if they can do it, I can do it too.
Um, and when you think about like a lot of the, I guess like earlier you were saying, a lot of people don't think that while people were enslaved, they had these opportunities. So how do you create opportunities for yourself when it seems like there are none?
Uh, well, I think the first thing you do is when the lights go out and you can't pay the bill, you come up with an opportunity. You know, you get to thinking, I got to come up with something.
Right.
And hopefully that, and I don't want it to be that drastic by no stretch, but
Right.
it has been for some folks. Some people said, I lost my job and I had to come up with some way to make it. And so they did some businesses along the way. And then they said, oh man, well, maybe I can do this for myself.
Mhm.
And so it's just a matter of someone's fortitude and
Mhm.
their own personal resilience so that they can, have a quality of life. And self-employment is one of those angles that can allow that to be the case.
Right. When you think about the future of Black businesses, what do you see, and how do we get to have more robust Black businesses?
Well, I think the future is bright because I'm a positive thinker. I'm not going to say it's gloom and doom by no stretch. Yeah, I mean, we got Black people that are really striving, you know, and
Hmm.
making headway one form or another. We got Black billionaires. It's not just one. It's a few of them out there. You know, we got Black millionaires and people who are, you know, buying businesses, selling businesses, and consulting, and you know, owning hundreds of McDonald's and Burger Kings and so on and so forth, and are very wealthy as a result of that. So I think that no doubt is bright because we're not going away,
Yeah.
and now things are more expensive. If you might want to say, I'm not saying because of the economy. You know, we know that we can travel to Africa. We're exposed to traveling to exotic places. All that costs money, and
Mhm.
so the fortitude that many of us have say we got to get the money. We got to figure out a way.
Right. Thank you. Um, and then also a quick question for you, Mr. Talley.
Yes.
Oh, I was just saying, as CCAC, why did you all decide to have this type of discussion and panel?
Whenever Anthony reached out to me, and I'm the diversity, equity, and inclusion coordinator in the Office
Hmm.
of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And one of my primary goals at the school is to make sure Black men who look like me have support, and to make sure that if there's any obstacles or roadblocks that they run into, that I'm there to support them. And his subject matter is one that actually gives inspiration to a lot of young men and women I run into because they think the obstacles they have in their life at this moment are hard and they might not be able to move past them to actually achieve their goals and reach the
Right.
place they want to get to. And when you hear stories like this, it can't do nothing but inspire you because to become wealthy and create an idea and be innovative in a time of oppression, if
Mhm.
our and it shows the resilience that's in our DNA and in our bones. So
Right.
if you can, once you hear these type of stories, you know that it's in you, and once you know it's in you, the things that you're facing are minute compared to the things they overcame. So
Mm,
that's why I feel is very important. And I'm a firm believer in. I believe that a true pathway to peace and prosperity and
mm,
unification of our race is through these type of stories.
right. Thank you so much. Thank you both. Is there a way that I could get possibly a picture of one of the Black business owners that you highlighted?
Yeah, I can email it to you.
Okay. I can put my email. Well, actually,
See, I can
uh,
email it to you. I can tell you. Yeah, let's see,
If you
what's the
just said
number?
you want us to just write it down if you're driving.
oh yes, yes. Or and also a picture of you, Mr. Um,
Brogdon.
Brogdon.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Does Michael have your email?
Um, I'm not
I,
sure. My
Okay.
email is the
All
letter
right.
S, like Sam,
Yeah.
mhm.
and then brown, like the color,
Yeah.
at trib, TRIB,
Yeah.
LIVE.com.
Yeah.
It's probably at triblab.com.
Yes, that's correct.
So what is Trib Live?
It's a newspaper here in the Pittsburgh region, one of the largest newspapers. I'm a features reporter and I cover communities of color.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, thank you so much for doing this too.
Oh,
Yes.
Appreciate
yes.
it. Yeah. Don't forget to put my website in there.
I won't.
Yeah, don't put the website in there, and I'll send it to you right now.
Okay. Thank you
Okay.
so much.
Thank you.
It's great to
Mhm.
hear from you and to learn,
Yeah. Well, thank you for coming on and doing this too.
of course.
Tell people about this great university too.
Yes.
All
Have a
right.
good evening.
You too.
You have a good evening as well.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
So let's I wanted to talk with my supervisor tomorrow when I get in the office about the books so we can know how many to buy. Because we
Okay.
do a literacy thing that she told me about every year, and we have a book club. And I know that she want to get some books.
Okay.
And definitely I know she want to get the children's book. So give me
Okay.
about 10 o'clock. I'll hit you up on the phone, and then
Okay.
we work the invoice and everything. And the other check is in the mail.
Okay.
Thank you,
Thank you,
man.
man.
Man,
All
thank
right,
you for
man.
reaching out.
Yeah.
How about
Yeah.
that,
No,
man?
man. Tell
I
people about me,
mean,
man.
I definitely will, man. I definitely will, man. Thank you for reaching out, man. Thank
Yeah.
you.
I tell you, it's kind of funny. Or not funny. It's kind of hard for me to do it because I don't see people when I got the screen up
Yeah.
and I'm just talking. So I got to just go at it.
And it was
And
way
then
more
I
people
try.
than they had it set up with on live and people still at the center. So there was
Okay.
19 people on Zoom. I gotta get with Belita to see how many people was actually in the building watching on the screen. So we had a
Oh
decent crowd.
man.
Yeah, we had a decent
Yeah.
crowd.
Oh
Yeah,
really?
yeah, because it was 19 of us on Zoom alone, and then there's people in the center. So I gotta get a count from her for that.
I wish you could have had them take a picture of that and send it to me.
Yeah, I'm gonna get with her tomorrow as well, and then I'll get all that information together.
If you know anybody over there, I have to take a picture of the people sitting there if it
I'll
ain't too late.
eh, if they there, she took pictures because she's gonna post
Okay.
on LinkedIn.
Okay.
She's
Cool.
captured the one thing she's good at over there. She's gonna capture every moment that take place over there. So I
Okay.
know she
Cool. I
got
like to
pictures.
see that, man. That's good. That's good promo for me.
Yeah, but I'll definitely give you a call tomorrow, so
Okay.
we can figure out how many books,
Okay.
ship them, get you paid.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Cool.
Cool, man. My guy, man.
Thanks, man.
Appreciate you,
Much
man.
love.
Thank you,
All
man.
right. Peace.